If you want to get involved in the new era of sports car racing, but are not an avid endurance fan, it can be really confusing with regards to what the classes are, who's racing where, and which factories are involved. Let's have a quick run through of the classes, the cars, and the environments they will race in 2023. Firstly, there are only two championships where the new LMH, LMDH or GTP style of car will race. Those are IMSA, the International Motorsports Association or the American Sports Car Series, and WEC, the World Endurance Championship, based mostly in Europe but also as far afield as Japan and Bahrain. Those cars are broadly the same. In fact, they're exactly the same across both of those championships, with LMH, LMDH and GTP cars all viable for competition in whatever the top class of those championships is. An LMH car is produced entirely by the manufacturer and is the original iteration of this class. The Peugeot, for example, is an LMH car, as is the Ferrari, cars which are put together entirely by the manufacturer themselves. An LMDH car has its basis in the spine of one of the four manufacturers in LMP2, the lower class, so they can use a Multimatic, an Oreca, a Ligier or a Dallara chassis as the basis or spine for their car. They can put their own powertrain in and then they can put their own bodywork on. This was considered a more cost-effective solution for teams to go racing and indeed manufacturers to go racing in the same class as the Le Mans hypercars. The BMW, the Cadillac, for example, are LMDH cars. Let's have a look through the hypercars. Firstly, the Toyota GR010, which is around a ton of prototype to the hypercar category regulations. It has a twin-turbo V6 engine producing just over 600 horsepower and a front motor powered by a lithium-ion battery which generates a further just over 200 horsepower. The car is an evolution of the car they raced last year and will be raced as a factory team across two cars in the World Endurance Championship. Peugeot 9X8 is also to the hypercar regulations and in many ways is a very similar car to the Toyota, with the front motors, the ICE unit powering the rear wheels, and indeed it's around just on the minimum weight of hypercar, around a ton. But it is a very different car in other ways. It has a very innovative aerodynamic concept with a wingless rear end moving the centre of pressure backwards to gain stability, and it also has a much lower capacity internal combustion engine sitting around 2.6 litres, whereas the Toyota is up at 3.5 litres. So it'll be interesting to see those two cars do battle. A further entrant into the hypercar class and another two entries into the World Endurance Championship will be the Ferrari, which is run by their traditional customer partners, AF Corsa. The 499P represents the Ferrari naming convention of using the cubic capacity of one cylinder to name their cars. It is also a twin-turbo V6 and has a capacity between the two, between the Toyota and the Peugeot, along with the hybrid system at the front to power only the front wheels, and Ferrari's own regen and delivery system to make sure that all of that runs smoothly. That'll be run as a factory and driven by factory drivers. The more private end of the LMH spectrum, the Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus, or the SCG 007, is the car owned and sold and operated by Jim Glickenhaus, which has a litre V8 engine capable of producing up to 700 horsepower or so. That is around a tonne's worth of twin turbo V8 prototype, and is one of the only cars in the class which doesn't have any kind of hybrid system. They'll be running one car in the World Endurance Championship, perhaps extending for two for the 24 hours of Le Mans. And on the very extreme end of the Le Mans hypercar privateer spectrum, Bicolis Racing have revived the 1950s Grand Prix name Vanwall to put in a hypercar under the same name. That'll be powered by the same Gibson V8 tuned up that has been used in the LMP2 category historically, and will be a very interesting program to see how that develops. That car is entered for one car into the World Endurance Championship in 2023, although specs and information about it are not too readily available. Then come the LMDH cars with more standardised parts, particularly in the hybrid system, built around the spines of previously existing LMP2 cars. For example, built around the spine of the previously existing Multimatic is the Porsche 963, which is a 4.6 litre V8 hybrid prototype with 2 turbos. The hybrid system kicking in the LMDH cars is a standardised unit and only attaches, in terms of an NGUK, to delivery of power at the rear wheels, meaning these cars lose hybrid capability. These cars are also prepared for the factory team, for example with the Porsche in the shape of Penske, racing in both IMSA and in the World Endurance Championship, but also for customer teams, which is a major focus of LMDH racing. The Porsche 963, for example, has already been sold to LMP2 champions Jotosport and Proton Competition, who have a long history of racing with Porsches. BMW M Hybrid V8 borrows the chassis from the LMP2 Dallara and will race only in America this year. It is a twin-turbo V8 with around 4 litres of capacity, and it produces just under 700 horsepower with the hybrid system spec available for the LMDH category. The Cadillac V Hybrid is the only naturally aspirated car to the LMDH set of regulations, and as such has one of the largest cubic capacities with a 5.5 litre V8 engine. The car is loosely based on their challenger in Daytona Prototype International, which was the iteration of car racing in America before these new LMDH, LMH regulations came into play. It's been given to both of their customer teams, Action Express and Chip Ganassi Racing, to race in both IMSA and the World Endurance Championship in 2023. Last discussed of the existing current cars which are homologated for competition, the Acura ARX 06, which will race universally in the IMSA Championship this year and is powered by a small capacity V6 engine based around the Oreca chassis, which has been the most successful chassis in the World Endurance Championship in LMP2 for multiple years. That's a small capacity car which leverages the spec hybrid system delivered to the LMDH cars most aggressively and will be campaigned in IMSA throughout this year as a works programme. Well, hopefully that gives you a feel for what's out there and expands your enjoyment of sports car racing in the top class, the new era of LMDH, LMH and GTP throughout 2023. I hope you enjoy watching the races.